Good evening. The San Dimas City Council meeting for May 23rd will come to order. Please rise. Please follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag and States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to apologize for the tardiness of the meeting. Unfortunately, we were in a closed session matter that needed to be handled.
That reminds me, Mayor, I'm sorry, I need to give a closed session report. The City Council met in closed session to discuss the one item on the closed session agenda, conference with labor negotiators. City Council had discussion about that item and gave direction to the City Attorney staff. But there was no reportable action taken. The council decided to continue that item to the next meeting.
Thank you. I'd like to read a statement that we've received from the heroes concerning an incident that happened years and years ago that should never leave all of our minds. Okay? Let's not forget, Tuesday, June 9th, 2023 is the 28th anniversary of the tragic death of Glendora police officer Louis Pompey. Officer Pompey, a resident of San Dimas, was off duty at a Vaughn's Market in Villa Verde. He was standing in a checkout line when two young men were pistol whipping a store employee while attempting to rob the store. After Officer Pompey identified himself as a police officer, both robbers opened fire, hitting him 6 times. While he was mortally wounded, he returned fire, wounding both of the robbers. Officer Pompey died 6 hours later at San Dimas Community Hospital while in surgery. In honor of Officer Pompey's heroic action, a special remembrance ceremony will take place at the Officer Louis Pompey Memorial at Villa Verde Park, San Dimas, pointing off of Villa Verde, on Friday, June 9th at 10 a.m. The public is welcome to attend. Officer Louis Pompey, he will never be forgotten. And I would request that the council close tonight's meeting in remembrance of Officer Louis Pompey, and we'll move to that direction at the time. Okay, could I have a roll call of people, of the council people here, please?
Councilmember Nakano.
Present.
Councilmember Weber.
Here.
Councilmember Viana.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Ebner.
Present.
Mayor Badar.
Here.
Record will reflect all council are in attendance.
Thank you. The public hearing item related to recreational vehicle parking permit regulations on driveways and city streets is being pulled from today's agenda and will be agendized at a future meeting. It is at this future meeting that official public comments on this item will be taken. Due to a request from a city councilman, we're going to remove the report section of the city council and the future items being requested by council people from the end of the meeting till right now. So anyone who attended any kind of a meeting paid for by the city wish to report at this time?
Mr. Mayor, I'll report I attended the California Contract Cities Association annual conference from Wednesday to Sunday or to Saturday, and the sessions were great, very educational, and good to learn in different areas of energy and public safety as well as housing. And then just, although not at the expense of the city, I did attend the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority elected officials summit from Sunday to Wednesday, and discussed a lot of different topics related to risk management and what have you that was very educational and helpful to the duties we do here. Thank you.
I too attended the California Contract Cities Association meetings. There are a lot of great sessions. Briefly mentioned that there are lot of the speakers, but one was Stephanie Wiggins, who's the CEO of Metro, and she had a lot of good things to say. One of the things that was good to hear from her was that they are looking at increased security and better cleanliness on all the rail system, especially light rail, which is one of the concerns that we have about the Gold Line coming to San Dimas: security, safety, and cleanliness. Otherwise, it was great.
I too attended the California Contract Cities Association conference from Wednesday night to Sunday morning, and the sessions really were informative, and I think the best session that I took away the most from was the talk technology and policing with Sheriff Luna and the Beverly Hills Police Chief. I don't quite remember his name, but these issues and public safety issues that they were discussing moving forward are going to be very high up on the priority list for all of us, I think.
Mr. Mayor, I also attended the same conference and echo all the comments previously stated by my colleagues.
Thank you. I too attended the conference, and as Eric Weber said, we had an opportunity to hear and listen from the newly elected Sheriff Luna. It was a very interesting conversation because we also was visited by the Chief of Police of Beverly Hills. And I will tell you that no one ever say that money doesn't do a lot of things. Beverly Hills actually has a unbelievable communication system and camera system, but they also tout the fact that they have the community that can afford to do it. And but it gives you a lot of great ideas, and the cities in time will start looking at some of these directions. But Sheriff Luna was very cordial. He has a big job on his plate, a lot bigger than we all think, and that I think that he's a lot different than some sheriffs in the past. He's a very quiet, listening person, and he doesn't get really upset. He understands what his job is and roles, and I think he has the respect of at least the people that I know and the deputies that I know. That he's taken a different approach. Okay. Also, at this time, we're going to go ahead and do the reversal. Any comments from the dais here? We normally hold that at the end of the meeting, but there's some things that want to be talked about while we have a full session here. So, Mr. Eric Weber.
I'd just like to see if there's any interest from anybody in the council to direct the city manager to draft a letter to the Sheriff's Department, the County Board of Supervisors, that opposes the mandatory rotation of deputies from our sheriff's station. I think, mostly I think there's great value in the tenure and connections that deputies forge while they're here at our station, and that institutional knowledge really is the bedrock of community policing, which we all know is an infinitely good thing, and forcing that rotation would undermine that which we know is an infinitely good thing for everybody involved, for both them and the community.
I'm interested in that.
Thank you.
Well, rather than, is there anyone not interested in sending a letter?
No. We're just gonna have the city manager draft a proposed letter to consider at a future agenda item. So we're not deciding to send it right now, but it'll come back at a future meeting. Is that right?
Not the way I understood it.
Are you asking for us to draft it instead of bringing it back in a drafted form for
Well, I think the way I understood it, we need to get it to them sooner than later, sooner than 2 weeks from now.
Well,
Okay.
the problem with that is it's not on the agenda tonight to send a letter. So it would have to come back to a meeting on the agenda for the council to approve sending a letter of opposition. Is there some deadline for getting the letter out?
My understanding is there's discussions going on about implementing the policy. I have the authority to send a letter on the city manager's behalf, correct?
That's correct.
It would still be good to get one back for the council to send, and I don't know of a deadline on that, at least in talking to some people at the conference, but I could be wrong.
I don't know, I was just going on the basis of what was discussed at the council.
We'll bring a letter back for the council's action to be a letter that comes from the council, and I'll be exercising my authority as city manager on a different front related to that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, any further comments?
No, nothing further.
Okay, now this is the opportunity. There will not be a second opportunity at the end of this meeting to make any comments, so, Ryan?
I'll never pass an opportunity to make some comments. No, I just would like to say, California Contract Cities, for those that don't know, every year the council and council members from all over the state go down, well, most of them from LA County, go down with the Contract Cities Association that basically lobbies and does some things, educational sessions on behalf of the cities that are members of the association, which we are. So it's a good time. It's a good opportunity. It's also a good time to be able to do some team building among the council and what have you, and just getting to know each other in a different light. So I did enjoy spending a lot of time with our newest member, Council Member Nakano, and getting to get to know each other on a little bit different level. And we all actually, well, all of us, we take that opportunity not only to go attend the educational sessions, but we tackle training as well. A couple of us did attend our mandated sexual harassment training. If you don't know, we do that every 2 years. And then we also have Assembly Bill 1234 training, which we'll do next year when we attend that conference. So I want to thank staff, Deborah and Chris and everyone that went, made that event really nice, and it worked out. Secondly, I know there was a lot of community interest over the project at 740 East Foothill. Rest assured that the council and the city have not forgotten about that, and we are following that closely and continuing to work with the county supervisor's office and look forward to the continued public sessions related or hosted by National Corps. And we hope that those sessions are fruitful for the community and for the interest of all parties. And lastly, I'll probably be excusing myself a little early tonight. I unfortunately had a little mishap and I'm in a great deal of pain, but needless to say, if I excuse myself at some point, that'll be why. So thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council, for taking a few of these items out of order so we could get that done.
No worries. I have nothing to add right now.
Okay, I just...
If I may, Mr. Mayor, the only thing I would add is the piggybacking off of Councilman Vienna's point with respect to the public sessions for the Foothill project. My strong preference would be that those sessions be held publicly, not on Zoom. I feel residents do have the right and should have the right to interact with staff directly in an environment that allows them to provide their feedback. So that's the only thing I would say, not just have those sessions, but in person in public.
Right. Okay. And I also want to bring that up is, I believe, July the 8th? 6th? July the 6th?
July
Chris, could you
6th.
address that?
So we've been working at the direction of the council from the last meeting. We've been working with the city of Laverne to schedule a joint community meeting that also includes all the council members. And we've tentatively locked in a date of July 6th at 6:30 p.m. here on our campus to be able to hold that meeting. We're working with the supervisor's office to ensure that we have the appropriate county departments that include LACTA, the Los Angeles Community Development Agency, regional planning, the county, and also the developer, National Corps, so that residents in the community can actually ask the questions and get information and more information on the project. And so that meeting will be forthcoming in terms of the public announcement.
Okay, will that meeting be held here in the chambers or be held in the Plummer building?
It will be in the community building.
Okay. And will that be able to be televised?
We will be working with K-West to have that televised, and we're also looking at bringing in a moderator, a retired judge, to help facilitate the questions that will be directed directly towards the developer and the county. with the councils having the ability to ask and engage themselves also. So we're looking at not running it like a traditional council meeting where the council's sitting in front and then the public is speaking towards the council. It's really intended to facilitate that engagement with the county and the developer, and that the councils are also there to be able to provide their input and their questions as it is their community meetings and impacting their community.
Thank you. Okay. As we all know, that's a little bit different by having the reports and the future items agenda at the beginning of the meeting, but due to the special circumstance, we decided that was the best way. So we'll move on now to oral communications. Members of the audience are invited to address the City Council on any item on this agenda or not on this agenda. Please comment. Public comments will not be taken during each individual item except for public hearing items. Comments on public hearing items will be heard when that item is scheduled for discussion. Under the provisions of the Brown Act, the legislative body is prohibited from engaging in discussions on any item not appearing on this posted agenda. However, your concerns may be referred to a staff or set for discussion at a later date. Each speaker will be limited to speaking once for up to 3 minutes.
First speaker will be Margie Green.
Good evening, City Council, and all you other people. I'm here to tell you about something that the Chamber of Commerce is promoting for the Sheriff's Department. The City Business Watch meeting, and this really ties in very well with Louis Pompey and what happened to him. Quarterly, the Sheriff's Department puts on a program. We'll be meeting on June 9th, that's Friday after this, and the topic this quarter is active shooters. It's a presentation by the Sheriff's Department, learn how to stay aware and stay responsible. So that would be a good time for all businesses or any members of the community that would like to come. It's going to be at the Masonic Lodge, and that starts at 8:30 in the morning. Presentation will start at 8:45. It will be certainly worth your while to come to. It's nice that the city, the Chamber of Commerce, and Catherine Barger's office all get together with the Sheriff's Department and puts this on a quarterly basis. So please attend. It would be worthwhile. It's good for the community, and come show your support. They also usually have some goodies to eat for breakfast, and they have some free giveaways that morning. So there again, it is at the Masonic Lodge, and that's at 220 North Monte Vista, which seems to be more on the corner of 2nd Street in Monte Vista. And that will be at 8:30 in the morning on June 9th on a Friday. So hope to see you there. It's a great way to support the community and learn a lot how to protect yourself and how to be aware of things. Thank you.
Thank you, Margie.
Margot Tannenbaum.
Good evening. I'm here representing the San Dimas Library next door. My name is Margot Tannenbaum, and I'm the children's librarian there. And we just wanted to make everybody aware that starting June 1st, we'll be having our annual Summer Discovery Program, used to be known as the Summer Reading Program. And we are really happy that we'll be back to a full spectrum of programs this summer after, both COVID and then being shut down for renovation. So we will be starting at the beginning of June with weekly children's programs, and that will go all the way through the end of July. We'll be having some excellent performers, including magicians, musicians, ventriloquists, puppet shows, bubble shows, etc. So lots of fun things for the kids. We'll also be having a monthly program aimed at adults during the summer and a monthly program aimed at teens. For further information on any of these programs, you can consult our website online. The children's programs you do have to sign up for, and you can do that online. And you can also pick up flyers inside the library. And thank you so much. We appreciate everybody's support of our library.
Thank you.
Those are all the speaker cards, Mayor.
Okay. Is there anyone else in the audience who would like to speak to the council?
Good evening, Council. My name is John Begin, and I was hoping to just point out a couple of items here that are, because they're on the agenda tonight, and it's regarding the change orders for Ultra Systems, the environmental firm that you guys hired for SP11. If you look at page 289, at the top of the contract, at the top of the page, it's a little constructive criticism, but at the same time, it needs to be pointed out. The amount of the contract is supposed to be $75,140, but yet it's written out as $116,910. I know that's a type error, but from where I come from, the portion in writing usually supersedes the dollar amount written in paragraphs. And the other portion that I'd like to read out of the contract here says, the city may at any time, for any reason, with or without cause, suspend or terminate this agreement. I highly think that you guys should terminate this agreement with this firm, because it's pretty obvious from the report that they're not doing a qualified job. The next portion of this on page 289, it states that in the event this agreement is terminated pursuant to this section, the city shall pay the consultant the actual value of the work performed up to the time of termination, provided that the work performed is of value to the city. Well, I would argue that most of the work that they've done is not of value to the city, and that these change orders that are written down on here are specifically, at least 84% of it, which is on page 305, is answering questions from a recipient of our HOA community named Betty Jean Lamb. And she submitted 89 questions, and the consultant, Ultra Systems, answered 66 of them, spending a total of $8,000, $8,740 of city funds. This is ridiculous. There's no way anybody should be able to do this on the city's dime. And I think that is a negligent reason for overspending money on the consultant side and then trying to bill the city for it. So I would hope you'd consider that and maybe put some brakes on
Thank you, sir.
this consultant.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Good evening, everyone. It's a lighthouse tonight, so I'm going to start off with something positive. I want to thank the city. I want to thank Public Works. Sherry has worked extremely hard. The county, as well as I think the state, on the Villa Verde Street repairs avenue. It's fantastic. There are no potholes. The lines are bright white. It's smooth. It's amazing. After all those rains that we've had, and for those of us that live in Villa Verde or that travel through to get to the freeways, it's a beautiful ride. If you haven't taken it, come on through. But I want to think it's been a lot of work. It's been a lot of time. And we've asked, as well as many of the HOAs, and there are a lot of homeowners up there, what's going on, and we're just very pleased with it. So thank you so much. I'm glad you're back. Okay, and then I would also like to address, it is item 9 on the consent calendar. That's $16,600. That's change orders going to Ultra Systems. I was surprised to see that last night, so I was up very late reading that and reading the contract and that. And we have a homeowner up there that's been waiting for 3 years to build a beautiful home, beautiful neighbor I'd love to have. And due to the fact that there's a few disgruntled neighbors that do not know anything about municipal codes, grading, HOA, CCNRs, this has gone too far for 3 years. We all know what we're talking about. And when I saw the 89 comments from one person who does not live on that street, as you know, I've been to for 3 years I've been here with these petitions with 30 people that live on that street. I speak for 30 people. I've had many council members up there and taken you to their homes. We're all involved with our street. We want to get our street finished, a beautiful neighborhood, and now we're worried about this is prolonged time with all these ultra systems and all these environmental reports from people that do not live on the street, that do not live in the area 1. And we think that the residents should have more of a say, that live up there, that invest up there, that pay the taxes up there. As now we have a tree deal coming. I have pictures of these wonderful walnut trees that if they're trimmed and beautiful that we own on 15 acres, they're beautiful. If they're dead, we need to be able to handle our own trees in our own area. Now we have people trying to control our trees, as well as this picture. Of course, I do have some city people here. I love you all. But there's people here trying to come after our trees now in one certain area. It's got to stop. We've got to let this neighborhood progress, these people progress that take care of their area. The nuisances that are costing the city ridiculous hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've been here for 3 years. You know that. I'm here every 2 weeks, city council. I'm not going away. I live there. I know everybody. I work with the sheriffs. I work a lot in the city. So I would just like to say once again that those fees are erroneous. And please listen to the residents more than disgruntled people.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak to the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion unless a member of the city council requests separate discussion.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to pull item number 9 for separate discussion. But other than that, I'll move approval.
Second.
All in favor of all of the consent items with the exception of item number 9?
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, hearing none, all items with the exception of number 9 is approved. We'll bring back number 9.
If staff can make the presentation and then discuss looks like the errors pointed out, or at least the language error, which I think that's in the agreement, right? That's not even we're only doing a budget appropriation right now.
Correct.
But that's a issue that probably needs to be amended in the original agreement.
Yeah, that appears to just be a typo in the agreement that's already been signed and executed. Someone on staff or I usually catch those things, but it looks like we didn't catch it this time. But $75,000 is the amount.
Okay.
I'll ask Planning Manager Lewis to give a report.
Good evening, mayors and members of the council. So again, just to provide a little more information on this change order. So the work with the consultant, it has been completed. We did have a set contract to complete the M&D. Under contract, they had proposed to respond to 20 environmental comments, which is typically what you get when we process M&Ds, and they have to respond to all comments related to the environmental document, regardless if the comments come from a resident on the street, a resident in the city, or from anyone. So they have to respond to all the comments. So the contract had allowance for 20 comments, and I believe that part of the agreement was for about $5,000 or so. And so we did get a lot more comments than you typically do. From one particular resident, we had 89 comments. So the consultant was obligated to respond to those comments. So that is one portion of the change order, majority of the change order. The other aspect of well is, so as part of their initial biological analysis of the properties, they were tasked to do a reconnaissance survey. So essentially, they go out there and they look at majority of the properties just to get an overall feel of what's out there in terms of vegetation and species. They don't go out there and look at each individual property throughout the entire property. So they did that, completed that task. They met with us, and that's when they drafted the mitigation measures, which we had concerns with. So in an effort to reduce the mitigation measures, we tasked the consultant to go back out to the properties and look at each individual property and map out each property, their vegetation and any species that was found, to see in the hopes that we could reduce the mitigation measures. So that task was completed. That's part of the change order. Unfortunately, it did not reduce the mitigation measures, so actually further strengthened their measures in regards to how they looked at it. So that's another part of the change order. And lastly, their contract had called out for 4 public hearings for the project manager, and I believe collectively, because of the comments involved and concerns, they, at the first planning commission meeting, they had 3 people attend the meeting, and then 2 city council meetings, they had a total of 2 at each meeting. So that's the other part of the change order. So at this point, we haven't tasked the consultant to do any other work. Their work has been completed. And we are now working with a separate consultant to complete a peer review of their work. And my understanding is that we will no longer need that first consultant as part of this project. So that second consultant will do the peer review, and if any additional work is needed to either recirculate document or respond to comments, that new consultant will take over the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This is the consultant that was here not too long ago.
Correct.
Same one.
Yes, it's Ultra Systems is a consultant that we initially hired to do the work, and it's the change order in question tonight.
Thank you.
Do we have any idea when to expect this back before us or back before the staff from the new peer consultants?
It's hard to say. So what they're working on right now is they're going to go back out to the properties and do their own analysis and do their own reconnaissance survey. So we're working with John Begin to schedule to help us coordinate with the property owners so we can get them out there and do most of the surveys, in a couple of days as opposed to spacing them out. So that's what we're working on right now. Realistically, maybe towards the end of the summer, we may be able to come back, depending on what they find. But the initial analysis that they looked at in terms of review, they feel that they could reduce some of the measures. So we're in hopes that they can do that. And once they get out there and kind of remap some of these properties and look at the vegetation, and especially because, right now a lot of these properties are going through the annual clearance that's required by LA County Fire. So one of the things that we've asked the new consultant to look at is to consider is that majority of the areas where the work is going to take place is cleared annually, either by the LA County Fire Department or by the property owner. So that should take that into account. So that's one of the things that they'll be looking at.
All right, any other comments?
One quick question in regards to the number of comments that Ultra Systems had to respond to. So I see on there that one of the other large volume of requests was from Department of Fish and Wildlife. It didn't seem abnormal to me that Fish and Wildlife might have clarifying questions or something in regards to a report like this. But when you mentioned that generally we get about 20 questions that Ultra Systems will answer on our behalf as a part of these on a normal basis, that 41 questions from California Department of Fish and Wildlife seem like that might be high. Is that abnormal for them to have that many?
It's going to vary depending on where the studies are being done. So because of the proximity to Walnut Creek and because of the topography and existing makeup of these properties, where a lot of them consist of scenic easements where they're natural in area, CDFW actually were requesting that we add mitigation measures to the report. So they were actually asking that the consultant add additional species, add additional vegetation, and add more survey requirements as part of the report. So the consultant responded to those comments, and they were somewhat recommendations from CDFW. So the consultant's recommendations were that we didn't have to adopt those or accept those. So that's the reason there was a lot more comments from CDFW. It's just because of the location of the project.
Okay, thanks.
If I recall correctly, though, that's based off of the scope that the consultant understood when they sent the project. Is that correct? Because when they presented that, when we had them here, they kind of took a worst case scenario, is what I think they said, in terms of the area, and they just kind of did a very broad brush approach. So that would be the comments that Fish and Wildlife was responding to then, is that area that they did, right? The way they presented it?
Yes, and also I think, some of the items that CDFW was referencing, they were referencing like Bonelli Park and other areas that were, over a mile away, where they had seen or documented sensitive vegetation or other species. So that's kind of another reason why the CDFW was asking for these additional comments. But in terms of the scope, we were as clear as we could be with the consultant in regards to what we were looking at. And we actually had several conversations throughout the entire process in regards to the whole clearing of the properties and the disking, and that, a lot of these areas that are going to potentially be graded have been disturbed and continually are disturbed every year. So it was just the consultant's opinion that didn't really take effect into it.
And all of the, I hear what Mr. Began said, that, as it relates to the number of comments, the comments required responses from the persons whom submitted them. So they were required to respond to those, correct?
That is correct. And I will add that the comments from Betty Jean were very in-depth, almost as, I don't know her background, but, from a professional biologist in regards to related to the field, that these comments were coming in. And so the comments, the responses were actually very in detail, very in depth. And as you are correct, the consultant is obligated to respond to these comments.
I'm not necessarily thrilled about the money, but I am impressed that she required more responses than Fish and Wildlife. But nevertheless, I'm very much. I can't wait to move past this particular matter, but appreciate the clarification, and I do agree. It is frustrating. And one last thing, I'm sorry. Did this work occur after they presented to us?
Before, yes.
So this is just catching up then.
Yes, yeah. We questioned some of the work, and we had discussions back and forth, and also consulted with the city attorney in regards to the comments, just because it's not your typical, in terms of the number of responses. So we wanted to make sure that we were just doing things correct and right. And yes, the work, all the work in this change order was completed prior to coming to city council.
All right, thank you.
I just want to say that I appreciate the staff's work on this matter and the consultant's work, but I also appreciate the fact that we have community members on both sides of this matter that feel like somewhere along the line they're backing up. They're not going forward, because this matter has been on the table for about 3 years, and it just seems like not understanding the entire process. I think most community members would feel that, there's a disservice, because you got a guy up there on the hill waiting to try to build his house. You got other people waiting to find out what's going on with the trees, and that it's just very disgusting that it's taking over 3 years. It reminds me back to when we were trying to build a bathroom at the Equestrian Center, and it took us 7 years. So I just think we need to figure out and maintain a comprehensive report that we all can, understand and figure out exactly where we're going. And I'm not slighting the staff in any way, shape, or form. I don't know the consultants other than hearing a report. But if I was a community member living up in that area, I'd be pretty frustrated myself, and I am frustrated from just sitting in this position. So I'm hoping that we can move forward and not have a 7-year bathroom in the Via Verde area up on Area 1. It just needs to figure out what the right thing to do, and it is. So the city has committed a great deal of money to this, and I'm not sure how much longer this is going to go. It's almost frustrating. So, and I'm not taking it out on you, Louis, because I know that your heart's really into this and the staff, and I appreciate it. But if the community could just get some type of resolution sooner than later, but it's got to be the right resolution. But it's very difficult when people call you and say, hey, this is taking a long time. So thank you.
Yeah. Chris, just so I understand then what you're asking, this is within your ability to pay it, within your discretional authority. This is simply the fact that you require an appropriation outside of, you're just asking us to appropriate the $16,000 to move money?
Correct.
Well, John, I'm not happy about it, but it is what it is.
Contract reads, you don't have to pay it. Not a value.
All right?
The work has already been done, and maybe not to our satisfaction or like, but the work's been done per the contract. We owe them money, and I think it's a lot as well. But I'll make a motion to approve the appropriation of the change order dollars.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. We'll move on to other business. Approval of the resolution 2023-35, setting the amount of the public educational and governmental access channel fee for the fiscal year 2023-24. Michael?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. The recommendation of staff tonight is to approve Resolution 2023-35. It's a requirement every year that resolution is approved in order to continue the 1% fee for all cable subscribers that receive the local channel that broadcasts things like our council meetings. These funds are used to help offset the costs of our contract with K-West, and that does the broadcasting of the council meetings and provides the content for the cable channel. This budget that we've assumed to get from the PEG fee is about $75,000, and next year's contract for K-West is about $95,000. So it still requires supplement from the general fund to cover the difference, but it helps. So the continuation of this funds are very necessary for us to be able to provide the channel. And with that concludes my report.
Michael, every year, you dust off the script and, we just change the date on this. Is there any reason we can't, in the future, just move this into the consent calendar?
I've asked about that, but for some reason I believe it's just because it's part of the ordinance that we have to
I'm
do this
sorry.
as other business, but maybe it's more of a question for Jeff if that's something that can go on consent.
I think it can be on the consent calendar. It does not need to be a public hearing, and I think we've talked about that.
Yeah, because I
before.
think
It
it's
doesn't
because a
need to be a
continuation of a
public
fee it doesn't need to do that. So
I'm sorry, Michael, I can't understand.
We will ensure that next year and going forward, we put this on the consent calendar as opposed to other business.
Yeah, I mean, I think in my experience here, my brief time, this has never been very controversial, and I think we all understand the necessity. So I would move approval as recommended, as well as moving forward that this item is placed on the consent calendar subject to all the rules that the consent calendar has.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. It'll be on the consent calendar next year. Okay, then we'll go ahead and
Put
move
your
into a
speech away.
discussion of fiscal year 2023-24 operating and capital improvement budget. Michael?
All right, thank you, Mayor and City Council. Michael O'Brien, Administrative Services Director. No, not that one. It's not in there. All right. Well, there was a PowerPoint presentation, but I'll just verbalize it. Can you pull it up from the agenda?
So as we're going there, I know that we've had several meetings where not all council members were present, and that this was discussed at a study session prior. We wanted to also agendize it for this meeting because the council member that wasn't there at the last meeting is now here at this one, and therefore, if there's further questions and clarification, we can actually offer that opportunity.
All right, so while it's getting pulled up, I'll just kind of recap for those listening at home and those in the audience. We did have a study session on April 25th, 2023, where we first introduced this draft budget. What we're presenting tonight is any changes that have happened since then.
Excuse me, Michael. I'm sorry. I think, Jonathan, we're talking about, Jonathan, the tech guy over here, as part of the agenda itself.
The agenda packet.
Some slides on pages 363 of the agenda itself. I'm sorry, Michael, for the interruption, but I think that was... Now, the thing is, they're sideways, so we'll see if we can do it.
There you go. All right, you just leave it there for now. I'll tell you when to pull down. So just to recap, the original draft budget was continuation of all our current programs and services. There was no recommendations for reductions or increases to our current services outside of the hiring of a housing coordinator and the services that position would bring and add to our housing successor agency and housing authority. Basically, all the major costs would go to any new capital projects, new equipments to help with efficiencies, and just overall, and any design projects. So with that, the changes that have taken place since this last meeting in April is we've completed salary negotiations with staff, which resulted in 3% salary increase for all full-time and regular part-time employees, which have now been incorporated into this draft budget. We have also had the approved of the increase in landscape parcel tax and the assessment for the Boulevard District. Northwoods elected not to have an increase in their district, and therefore we have amended the expenditure plan for that area, and that also resulted in less transfer-ins from the general fund in order to cover the gap that was originally presented in the past budget. Also, we had the actual numbers from the sheriff's contract were received, and our estimates, which were calculated at 8.65%, actually came in 8.61. So we recognized those savings, and then we also adjusted the cost based on the funds that were being used from the COPS grant in order to supplement some of those police activities. So with that, we basically had some additional savings that were not previously shown in the budget. So ultimately, we decided to add an appropriation of $250,000 from that savings to help pay off some of the unfunded liability in the PERS plan. By doing so, it helps lower the ongoing costs and helps us from adding 7% per year on that unfunded liability balance. So paying down that balance helps us in future budgets. So we're going to use that surplus to help offset that. All right, go ahead and go down. So what is the actual effect of that? Go down one more. Sorry, go to the next one. So in the general fund, when this slide was presented in the last study session, it was looking at the unassigned portion. In this one, we're now looking at the whole picture, which is including the Fund 70 New Equipment Reserve and the Fund 100 Capital Asset Reserve. So even though we are doing a transfer from the General Fund 001 to the Capital Asset Reserve Fund 100, that transfer itself doesn't affect our entire general fund, only what we actually end up expending out of that Fund 100. So in here, we're including those expenditures that are actually taking place in Fund 100. So when we look at it as a whole holistic view of the general fund itself, the actual change in fund balance will be $844,601, but just more will be moved into the assigned bucket than what would normally get dumped in the unassigned. But the real net gain for the general fund will be $844,000. Another thing of note, in the past month, we ended up receiving 2 settlement payments, one for the purchase of the park and ride, and then also was kind of a statewide suit, I believe, for PCB chemicals, which the city ended up receiving about $670,000 for the settlement. So between that and the portion of the park and ride and the portion of Freedom Park that was sold, there's a small part of that actually ended up being able to go recorded to the general fund from that sale. So ended up with a net increase to the general fund for this current year with those 2 items, and then we had some budget amendments to increase expenditures. So we're recognizing an increase about $973,000 in this current year. So we've updated the projected reserves to reflect that increase in this year's planned balance ending. So it's helped us to moving forward to what we're going to have available for future budgets. Next slide. Special funds, not really much changes outside of the landscape parcel tax increase. So this is still, we're looking at a negative 6.8. Of course, a lot of this is funds that have to be spent by this year, which the majority, the ARPA funds will all have to be spent by the end of 23-24, which is about 3.8 million. Also, we have Measure W funds that are lapsing, they'll have to be used. And we just have some big projects street projects that will be using up some of those built up funds. And then in housing, we have an excess surplus in our housing fund that, again, has to be spent by next year. And we also just budget for any emergency cases, or if there's, any of the infrastructure there that has to be redone, whether it's piping or if we're going to add internet or whatever we may have to do at that. We decide to do, we appropriate the budget for those purposes, but it may not be that much, but we do want to appropriate it. So we have about negative $2 million, but most of that is for the excess surplus that has to be spent.
Michael, I had one question for
Sure.
you. As the U.S. Congress and the President engage in discussions over the debt ceiling, I understand that one of the items on the table is to claw back unspent funds for COVID. Does that put any of the funds that we received at risk?
That we did get a notice from GFOA about trying to, although they seem that's going to be unlikely that the ARPA funds will end up being affected by this, it is a chance of that. I think in our area where we're in the revenue loss under 10 million category, I don't think we could be as affected as some of the others who had hundreds of millions of dollars, and they're more restricted on what they can spend their money on. I think that might be more at risk than ours, but there is discussion on it. I doubt that it's going to be the thing that they focus on with all the things that are happening.
If they did claw it back, would there be any projects that we would have to extract from the difference from the general fund at all? Or
basically anything that we aren't able, if we had to give back any of the ARPA funds, it would basically be supplemented with all general fund, because everything we're using ARPA fund was general fund expenditures prior.
Okay, thank you.
And just to speak to that, the ARPA fund for the last several years has effectively floated what is an ongoing future deficit. And so what we're projecting, you saw that in the numbers for the reserves, that in year 24, 25, when we no longer have any ARPA fund, that the expenditures would be exceeding the revenues by a significant amount. And so the only way to change that is increase the revenue or decrease the expenses or use reserves. And so if that change happened now in year 23, 24, where we're actually using ARPA funds for expenses that would normally be in the general fund, then we would see that deficit not in 24, 25. We would see it start in 23, 24, and we would be reducing or using reserves to cover the difference.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was anything that we could, so I understand that it is going to the general fund. Is there anything that you could pay for things that we're paying out of different budgets that would prevent the clawback of that money, is basically what I'm asking.
We've been doing that now for the last 2 years, and so what we're appropriating now is effectively the last of that money for the next year. So yes, in a absolute worst case scenario, they could claw it back before June 30th and before we're authorized to expend those funds, in which case we'll have to address it. However, I don't see that being likely.
Okay, great.
All right, so in total, for all funds, total revenues, we're looking at about a little over 45 million. Total expenditures, a little over 53 million. I am factoring out 497,000 that shows negative for ARPA funds, but the reality is the purpose for that is just to able to be a catch-all for us, meaning at the end of the day, I have to spend this money, and if certain accounts fall below the actual budget, I have kind of a catch-all account for money I know is going to get spent. It's just I'll draw it from the account in the general fund and charge it here in order to make sure we're at zero for that fund. But in no case are we going to go 497,000 negative. I just want to get the budget appropriated now, so in that scenario I'm able to apply it somewhere and not have to come back for additional late authority. So the reality is the projected net change for all our funds is about a little over 7.5 million of use of those funds. So major project wise, these were discussed at the special meeting the session that was done on April. The only addition is in the current year we had appropriated these Measure A funds to go towards the recreation center. But being that those funds are restricted in the sense that if you spend it on that certain project, you have to keep it for the next 20 years and you can't really touch it. So we felt that being that the rec center is kind of in flux on how exactly we want to utilize funds in that center and what improvements we want to make, if it's going to be a larger, more expansive project or less, we felt it was best to choose a different park and under the needs assessment in order to make those funds utilized. So in this case, we've now shifted this money towards Horsethief Canyon Park and the improvements that are necessary in that park, and looked for other funds to help make improvements at the rec center. But other than that, the other projects remain the same. Same thing with design, no changes from the prior meeting. And equipment, all those items remain the same. Also, same thing with the improvements to the Charter Oak, the online permitting software, which is a required thing that we do based on legislation, and the JS framework upgrades. And as I spoke about before, the housing coordinator is the one new service position, which will actually be funded through housing funds. NeoGov is going to be coming online likely by July 1, which will be utilizing those funds for a program that's going to help with our training, streaming, onboarding process. They'll help streamline a lot of that process where our employees, current and new, can go there to get old training on our systems or new training and be able to do all the onboarding paperwork through NeoGov as opposed to kind of the email process that we're doing now. And then funds for additional trainings to enhance our employees' abilities. And lastly, this is just that forecast that we've done in the past, just in graphical form. This is to highlight the additional funds that we're going to receive in this current year and the effects of it going forward. So basically, it's adding about $1 million to where we were looking at heading down in future years. The big dramatical shift, obviously, is 24-25, where not only do the $3 million in ARPA funds go away, or at least the remaining balance that we have goes away, and that's not being able to utilize towards the general fund expenditures that we've been utilizing it for currently, but also we have the general plan update budgeted in here, which is around a $3 to $4 million project. So obviously that would take a big hit, but the general plan in all likelihood would be a multi-year project. But the way we do things is we tell you up front what we believe it's going to cost, and we usually budget appropriate in the current year, but it ends up being carried over until it ends up being towards completion. But it is good to know what effect that's going to have overall on our fund balance. And then obviously it narrows down as we get to where we don't have as many projects programmed, but still we get to that point where it's projecting that expenditures are going to be over operating revenues. And then how do we get to a point where we can catch up back on these losses? Or are we just going to continue to have losses to the point where we're not able to do operations the way we were? So obviously we're working on a plan to try to right size that because we can't operate in a way where we're continually losing revenues or where revenues are continually under expenditures. And that concludes my report. I'd love to hear any input on the budget and what changes, if any, you may have, so that we can hopefully take back a finalized version at the end of June.
And let me just add something to this chart here. The key columns to look at is that 24-25 year, which is the third to the last column. You'll notice that green line. That green line is your established target for the general fund reserves of 75%. So we're predicting in set 24-25, we're going to be dipping into reserves significantly and barely exceeding what your targeted 75% is. And then the next year, 25-26, we're going to fall below it. The last column, you'll notice all those goldenrod or gold yellow colored parts of the bar that are on the top, going all the way until we get to the last bar that you see at the bottom. That yellow bar is the unassigned fund balance. It's what's considered free floating, not accounted for, not assigned to anything. It's the true reserve of available money you can spend right now. When that falls below that zero mark, the city has to transfer into the general fund at least that amount of money to balance the budget. And to give you kind of an idea of what does that mean, in 2013, which is the last year that the Government Finance Officers Association was collecting and reporting financial data across thousands of jurisdictions, city, counties, and school districts, they collected data on more than 2,000 cities. Of all of those cities, the number of organizations that yellow box fell below the zero mark equaled 19 out of more than 2,000 cities. So that tells you the significance of what that means when your unassigned fund balance is upside down. And so that is something to note, that what we were projecting deficits as early as 2018. We had been very fortunate in the actions that we were taking as a city, revenue that would come in that was not anticipated. And even with the pandemic, where cities had seen a significant drop in revenue, we were extremely fortunate that we had a pandemic-based business that generated more than $1 million in a year of tax revenue to keep us afloat. And then the ARPA money that would plug any structural deficits where expenditures exceeded revenue. And so the key here is we've been working on a resiliency plan to be able to properly respond to what we see being projected over the next couple of years. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. O'Brien? Eric?
Mr. O'Brien, I think the first question I have is...
Is your mic on, Eric?
I noticed that the increase in terms of the revenue that we're bringing in seems to be fairly steady year to year. And I guess that one of the questions I have is that since inflation has been higher, we take a cut of the sales tax. So I just expected the numbers to rise a little faster over the last year or two, because if the price of items has increased a lot more, and from what I understand, most people haven't really cut back on spending. They've been dipping into their savings to cover that. Why wouldn't we see a more dramatic increase in, say, the revenue that the city is bringing in from sales tax revenue?
So we utilize HDL to come up with our sales tax projections. And we've had discussion with them the last few quarters about how they see these things trending. And part of where inflation and yes, prices of things have gone up, it also causes less spending. So where we've seen that, yeah, the prices have gone up, but we're starting to see that dip. And they are projecting that there is going to be some effect of a recession. So they're trying to forecast that out, and that the net effect that they believe will be a small positive number. They're not projecting a major decrease in sales tax, but they are just thinking it's going to be pretty flat, and then eventually get back to a 2 to 3% increase beyond 24-25. So they are seeing a bit of a slowdown. Gasoline prices have gone down, which that was higher in the past year. So that's kind of not been as dramatic increase we think we would have saw with the higher prices for general goods. But yeah, that's been their general take, and they've been very accurate for the most part over the years. So we've held with the line with what they've been projecting.
I've been hearing and seeing some analysis that property values may either stay flat or decrease, and if that is the case, people could reassess their property values and therefore pay less property tax. Is that risk built into your model? Because that would also impact and accelerate the decline in revenue that the city would bring in, or has that not yet been accounted for here?
No, again, we use the 5-year projections from HTL for property tax as well.
Okay.
I think their take on is that so far assessments for housing is still increased. I mean, we look at the things today and they're still holding very high. Now, obviously, if they did start to go down, that would have an effect. But right now, they're not projecting in that manner. That's what we're going to have. So the max 3% that you could have a year based on Prop 13, they're kind of holding the line with that number. So they're not seeing a big drop anytime soon in that, but obviously that is a possibility.
Okay.
And if I may add to that, we also have to consider what the original basis of the housing properties are. And so we have a lot of housing that were purchased many decades ago. So in terms of what the variation that occurs in terms of the value going up and down, we're not as price sensitive to that, because we know that properties that were bought at 100 and 200 and 300,000,
because it's well below the rate and well below the market rate anyway.
Right. Where it's going to impact is what percentage increase we see going forward may become smaller, but not necessarily flip.
Yeah. Two other questions. I know that we will soon move into a period where we're talking about solutions. And one of the questions I had is that I know that it's been a concern of residents for a long time and the city council of some of the hotels operating in the city and the problems that have been raised associated with those hotels. If any of those hotels were to close, do we have an assessment or an idea of how much that would impact our revenue from hotel taxes?
I mean, depending on the hotel, some of our hotels generate over $300,000 in TOT. So depending on the hotel you're talking about, we're talking anywhere from $150,000 to $300,000 of losses from a hotel.
Okay. That's actually not as bad as I thought it would be if it's only
I believe in total.
150,000.
What's that? No, it's sorry if you indulge me for a moment to find the number.
So Michael's looking for the revenue number we get in transient occupancy tax for the year.
Yeah, in total, TOT is 1.7 million.
Okay.
A little over that.
And I'm guessing that the hotels that we're thinking about probably are on the lower end of that, lower percentage of that.
Be surprised.
Oh, okay.
And we also have to
A little
consider
concerning.
hotel closure completely is a pretty significant one. And so if most of the hotels have high occupancy, and so generally you would presume that they're actually doing well. If we were going after necessarily a hotel and looking at nuisances, and those nuisances weren't being debated, and we continue to go down the path of that could potentially lead to a closure of a hotel, in which case you would lose all that revenue. But I think there's a lot of other measures we would have to consider before we go down a pretty significant route of closing a hotel.
One thing that will also be, I think, good to note, not necessarily for this unexpected to have an answer here, but how many new housing units, apartments, those types of things might be needed or could be suggested to close that budget gap as well. Has that analysis been done at all, or is that something that we may want to think about? So if we built, say, I don't know, 30, 40, 50 new apartment units or some other housing, would that close the budget gap in terms of property tax and the estimated sales tax that those houses would generate? Or
unfortunately, our reality is our property tax gives us 6% of the 1%.
Yeah.
So we're not talking huge dollars when a new unit or two goes into San Dimas. If you're talking a huge development, then perhaps. But then you also have to consider: do I need to add another officer to help?
So kind of
cover,
cancel out in
this
terms of
whole
costs.
thing?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So,
just a rough calculation: if the median price of a single-family home is $800,000, and you calculate the taxes based on that, which gets us down to about $960 per home, with a $3 million deficit, you're looking at 3,100 homes.
Okay, that's pretty unrealistic. Okay, great. I don't have any other additional questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions? John? Okay. You do have one?
I do. How do our projections compare to our neighboring cities, and what sorts of remedies are they thinking about if they are looking at a similar situation? Do we have an idea?
I can be honest, I haven't looked much at how those cities' budgets are formatting. I know, other cities have passed sales tax measures, and that's kind of filled their gap. I know Covina, Laverne, that's definitely been their situation. Claremont didn't get theirs passed, and they had to make some cuts in order to make their budgets work. Glendora also had a sales tax measure that's helped put them back on track.
Glendora passed theirs.
Yeah, so all those are 10.25. Us in Claremont did not get ours approved.
Okay.
So we're similar with trying to figure out how to balance those things.
Laverne got theirs approved, right?
Yes, Laverne did.
So I can speak a little bit to that. So the surrounding cities have that higher, what they call a district tax, which is the add-on that gets them to 10.25. They also have the utility users tax like they do in Laverne, which is a 5% tax on utility costs. And then their fees are higher than ours. So in terms of cost recovery for services that are being provided, they're getting a much higher percentage rate of that recovery than we are. And to the extent that we're not, we're subsidizing that. In my discussions with our neighboring cities' city manager, they are looking at deficits, but they're also an agency that has police and fire. And they also are an agency that, because they have their own fire department, unlike us who signed up with the county a long time ago, we gave up a portion of our property tax increment, which is why we went down to about 6% of property tax, as opposed to a city like Laverne that's around the 16 to 17% of property tax that they're deriving. However, they have a utility users tax, they have a district tax, and they have a higher property tax increment, and they're still looking at a potential deficit. So I think you're going to see a number of cities across the valley that are going to be negatively impacted when the ARPA money goes away.
Yep.
I think for us as a community, though, while we do have a deficit that we have to address, fundamentally, though, we're much better off than we could have been otherwise if we made certain decisions along the way to enhance programming and enhance a lot of other aspects of our city that some cities have done. And so this we could actually work with. It just means that we're going to have to make some trade-off decisions at some point over the next year or two.
All right. Any further questions? Okay. Do you have what you need to move forward?
Yeah, it sounds like we can pretty much make any final changes and bring back for adoption in June. So, thank you.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, in terms of the next item, SB 9, I know that we've moved several items past when we haven't had all 5 council members, and there is a request to consider whether you want to defer this item until the next meeting so that all 5 council members could be in attendance as we discuss implementing changes to code in SB 9.
Yeah, I also received the same message that Councilman Viana would like to defer this, either continue it or table it, whatever the appropriate. Is there any discussion on that?
Yeah, I'm in favor of holding it over till next meeting.
Can it be continue it?
Sure, you can continue it. Does staff want to, would they like council to continue it to the next meeting or just to a future meeting?
We can do it for the next meeting.
All right. Is that okay? We'll continue item number 3, the discussion on which relates to minimize negative impacts related to Senate Bill 9 till the next meeting. Okay, we're going to move on to we've actually passed on the parking RV deals, so that's going to be held either next meeting or when?
We don't have a date certain. It may be later in the summer. There are a number of different comments that we had received regards to this that we want to evaluate before we see whether changes are to be made.
Okay.
We want to make sure that we don't end up in a study session or a public hearing where there are dramatic changes, which then just lead the council to defer that action to a future public hearing.
All right, thank you. Okay, then we'll move on to oral communications. Members of the audience, speakers are limited to 3 minutes or as may be determined by the chair. Anyone wishing to speak to the council at this time? Seeing none, we'll move to the, I'm sorry there, Mr. Gill. You look like you were hidden behind the camera.
I am hidden behind the camera, but the kind of when I see black on your cameras, it kind of makes me wonder if I'm the only game in town.
Nope.
All right, council members, I wanted to go ahead and submit this paperwork, please. This is to let you know that the people of Laverne and San Dimas are still petitioning against the foothill issue. As of yesterday, the video or the internet petition went over 4,000, and it will continue to rise. The actual signatures that we had signed are over 600. We will continue to rise. We still are unhappy with how National Corps is trying to sugarcoat by sending us Zoom meetings. We don't want that. You, as well as everybody else, knows we want them to come here. We want that building placed somewhere else. That little piece of land does not fit that building as they described it. We need it moved. We want it moved. And we will continue to put and add signatures. We will continue to raise numbers on our petition because that's how the people of Laverne and San Dimas feel. We want this building to move. And the fact is, we want to send a message to the LA County supervisors that they cannot, will not, and shall not make any kind of agenda without the approval of you, the San Dimas City Council, and the Laverne City Council. That's not fair. They should have notified you. They should have notified Laverne. We need input. We need a say into how things are going to be done in our cities. That's the way it should be and will be from now on. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I'll bring it back to the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This week we are celebrating National Public Works Week. On our social media, you will see that we made a post showing our public works team and honoring those who plan, build, maintain, and operate critical infrastructure, our systems, and services across our and all public communities. We will also be highlighting our public works contractors, RKA Engineering, who, while being contractors and not formally employees in the sense of what we have as traditional employees, they're an integral part of us delivering our public works services, and they should be honored for the work that they do. This month, we also published our first city newsletter to the community in an effort to increase public communication. You can find it on the city's website under the Residents tab, then Public Information, where we will be retaining a history of these monthly releases. We also have Fact Check San Dimas, which ensures we can address conflicting information about significant topics, such as the Foothill Project, which has been recently updated, and as well as other topics such as the Glen Rocky conversion to a secure youth treatment facility. That was our first Fact Check San Dimas that we placed online, and that still remains on the site. My last update pertains to the Gold Line. Just today, we received notification from the Gold Line that crews are completing the necessary signal equipment work at the Bonita Cataract intersection today and tomorrow, which will allow the intersection to fully reopen to all traffic movements by the close of the day tomorrow. So hopefully they stay on track, and by the end of Wednesday, we get our street back. With that, Mr. Mayor, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. City Attorney?
I have no reports, Mayor.
All right, seeing that we have had council members' remarks and requests for future meetings or agenda items at the beginning of the meeting, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn in honor of Officer Louis Pompey.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned in honor of Officer Louis Pompey from the city of Glendora. Thank you. He will never be forgotten. Thank you.